It's a people, it's a community, it's a life, it's a heart, it's a spirit.
Parents of gay children say, I want my son, my gay son, to have the same opportunity to come to me and say, hey, Dad, I'm getting married, as my non-gay son or my non-gay daughter.
The heck would you want a picture of a tattoo of $1,000 on your penis for?
You might just need to satisfy yourself sexually alone at that point.
Do I regret it? Not one bit. Did I think that I would actually take it the next step and do it again?
And what goes into their life, how they handle it. There are 12 houses, and each one of those houses has a particular function.
Look into yourself, think about it, and just be whoever it is that speaks to you.
Hello and welcome to Talking About. Tonight I am live with a very special guest, author, activist, among many other hats that you wear, Wayne Besen. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
Okay, well, yours is a unique, though not completely uncommon story. I mean, we met previously at the GLBT Expo, and we just kind of we did a brief interview that unfortunately had to be aborted for technical reasons. And you talked about part of your coming out process, and I just wanted to retouch on that a little bit to begin.
Coming out was incredibly difficult for me. I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I happened to be the captain of the basketball team. And so I had to fake really hard and have like a girlfriend and everything, and then play this role like an actor. And I slowly started to come out. First I told my girlfriend, and she said, oh, thank God, I thought you were sleeping with another girl. Because, I mean, obviously this whole gentleman routine only lasted so long. At some point she was like, okay already, enough flowers, kiss me, you know. But after that, I slowly started coming out. And when I hit 18, I told my parents, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm gay. And they were like, oh my God. And my dad's like, well, you still like sports, don't you? And then I knew at that point we were going to have a really long coming out process. And it was complicated, of course, when my parents were walking in the mall and they found this ex-gay tape called Gay and Unhappy. And the tape was really weird. It was kind of like an anti-gay Enya, like new age music. And they had this really deep voice and like Barry White-ish kind of voice, except it wasn't singing love songs. It was saying, you like women's breasts. You like the way they smell. Presto, you're straight. And I thought I was for about 10 seconds till I picked up a copy of International Mail, and I'm like, this doesn't work. So that's really what my coming out process was like. And it took a couple years of acceptance, but thank God I got over it. My parents are wonderful. They helped, they edit my weekly column now. So I've been very fortunate. After the initial shock, they've come around. So I'm very blessed that they have been so good over the years after the initial fear. And a lot of it had to do with the religious right. I mean, there's so much misinformation that I had to battle from the beginning.
Well, I mean, you're one of the lucky ones.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because
I have to deal with people all the time at my organization, truthwinsout.org, who aren't so lucky, whose parents tell them that they're going to go to hell, that they're going to die of AIDS, and all the sinister, mean-spirited things that you hear from right-wing organizations are actually coming out of these parents' mouths. Some of it is just they're mean. Other times they're really loving and they care, but they've just been misinformed. So I think it's so important as a community that we get to the underlying myths and misconceptions and do everything we can to tear them down. I think it will make it so much easier for the next generation, and I think it already is. A lot of people are coming out much younger and they're a lot happier and healthier, and it's not such a big issue as it was when I came out.
Right. Yeah. I say when you were a teen or when anybody from our generation was of that age. I mean, it's not a long time, but there's a hell of a big difference.
Huge difference. In fact, there was really nothing out there when I came out in Honolulu. I called this gay hotline. It felt so dirty and so secretive. And you had a couple options. It was, you can go to the gay beach, the gay bar, the bathhouse, or like the three different avenues you could go. And it was also hush, hush, and nobody talked about it underground. I mean, at least it made us feel cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's no big. Today, it's like, yeah, whatever. But it was really. But it also, at the same time, made you think. It was that feeling, oh, there's something wrong. It's hidden. I think it all changed a few years later when I was in college. This all happened in '88, but by '92, with Bill Clinton getting elected, I think that changed the world. In that, gays in the military put gay rights on the front page of every major news magazine in this country. I mean, the love that dare not speak its name just wouldn't shut up for a while, and I think that ever since then it broke the taboo with the media, which was a crucial threshold to break.
Right. I mean, yeah, there was a huge turnaround during the Clinton years. Yeah, I miss them.
I think the whole world misses them right now. I mean, if it gets any worse, we're going to miss the Nixon years. I mean,
Oh,
I mean, that's how bad Bush is. I mean, it's really. I think he could go down as one of the worst, if not the worst, president in history. I think he hasn't really done anything right. And my organization's not political by any means. We don't endorse. We don't. But I mean, as an American, I think we've been through so much in the last 8 years. I think this country, from the economy to just the sheer incompetence with Katrina, to gay rights and the whole marriage amendment was Bush-backed. It's been profoundly disturbing, and I think we have to look at nations like Spain, who had very religious for many years and had a dictator, and they're ahead of us now and have marriage throughout the country. I think you have to take pause and go, wow, we're really falling behind, and Bush. It's going to be a relief when he's gone.
Trying to send us back to Leave It to Beaverland is really,
Well, if he said, "Hey, it worked for Laura, it might as well work for the rest of us." Kind of, he already got her a Stepford. Now, I with all due respect, she's fine. I know it's not Laura we have a problem with. It's well, her husband. It's not her fault she has bad taste. Hey, I've been accused of it with some of my exes, so I feel for her.
So, well, I mean, the whole exposing of hypocrisy has been part of your writings as well. Just going back to this was your first book, Anything But Straight?
Yeah, Anything But Straight. And we got a picture of John Polk on the cover, who was the leader of the ex-gay ministries, and he was just amazing. He was the king of the ex-gay ministries. This man was on the cover of Newsweek. He was on 2020. He was on the Big O, Oprah Winfrey, peddling his tale of sexual conversion. And lo and behold, I got a call from my colleague at the Human Rights Campaign where I worked at the time, Daryl Hershaft. He said, "Wayne, you got to get down to the bar, Mr. Pease, right now." Like, well, I don't want to get down to the bar. I'm working on my new book on the ex-gay ministries. He goes, "You better get down there. Chapter 1's hitting on me." And I'm like, what? John Polk, the king of the ex-gay ministries, is trying to take me home. And I don't think I have ever run so fast in my life to get down there. Got a camera, and I look like Carl Lewis in his prime. I mean, it was just an amazing sight to watch. And it was him. I photographed him, and soon he went from the king of the ex-gay ministries to slowly declining his career. And he also was put on probation. He worked with Focus on the Family, Access International. I don't know what it is, but I just can't stand hypocrites. I think they need to be exposed every chance we get. I think people should be honest and open about all issues. I don't think people should be living their lives one way and telling everyone else to live it a different way. And it's not just with the gay issue. I mean, Eliot Spitzer was a good Democratic governor, and he was fighting against prostitution, for example, while frequenting a prostitute.
Exactly. Well, more than one.
He run up some pretty good tab there.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't think people should be living that way. If you're going to preach it, you better damn well practice it, in my book.
Yeah, I agree fully. And that was actually when I first heard your name, when you first came to my attention. Just the whole situation, it wasn't instantly all over the media. It a very slow snowball.
It was very slow, and it was hard to convince the mainstream media right off the bat that this ex-gay leader who I photographed in a gay bar should be covered. But the gay media broke it first, and that's why the GLBT media is so important. And it turned up in Southern Voice, which is part of the Blade chain, with the Washington Blade, the New York Blade, the
Okay.
Southern Voice, which is Atlanta's gay newspaper. And because it turned up there, it was able to get into the Associated Press and in the Colorado Spring Gazette. And from there, it ended up a little thing in Newsweek on 2020. But it was, what was incredible, this was one of, before the internet was as huge as it is today as far as activism, and it was still big, but not like today, where it's ubiquitous. But
It did cause a
hundreds
chain
of
reaction.
it did, and that was amazing. I mean, people were telling me they were getting 5, 10 emails about this when it finally broke, and the reason was that I photographed him in the year 2000, but in 1998, the right wing launched a $1 million advertising campaign saying people could pray away the gay. And they put big full-page ads in USA Today and the Washington Post, the New York Times, saying that you could pray or go to therapy and become straight. And they, right wing, called this a Normandy landing in the cultural war. So they had high expectations for it. Reggie White, the football player, was part of that, as well as Mr. Polk, who I photographed. And so there was really no closure. The right wing dropped this giant bomb of misinformation across the country, and there was a lot of arguing back and forth, and it wasn't really resolved. So this was kind of an exclamation point to that campaign, saying, aha! And people were very relieved that they could go back home the next Thanksgiving and tell their relatives, you remember that guy you showed me that went from gay to straight on the cover of Newsweek? Here he is in Newsweek again.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, in a gay bar. And the second star of that campaign, Michael Johnston, he was Jerry Falwell's personal ex-gay and appeared in television commercials with Coral Ridge Ministries and was in a video with the American Family Association. All the bad guys work for him. Founded National Coming Out of Homosexuality Day. And I got a call from a lawyer in Virginia Beach saying that he was having orgies with men he met on the internet. It was hard to believe that he was doing this, especially because he had announced in these ads that he was positive that he was having unsafe sex, and we had a videotape of him actually doing this.
It's astonishing.
It's astonishing that this man would show up in the morning and tell the world that he was reformed and he was healed, and then he'd turn around and go right to gay.com.
Right.
And now he's in a sex addiction facility in rural Kentucky, where he's been for many years now. And hopefully, for the sake of the community and the religious right, because they don't have to deal with this hypocrisy, he'll stay in this facility for a while until he gets his life together and hopefully comes out of the closet one day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really all you can hope for anybody, is that they get themselves together and it become self-accepting, and positive self-esteem is key. And would you think that self-esteem issues are very often at the root of some of the denials and people pursuing this route?
I think the vast majority of people at their core are in denial, and I think that they're told from a young age that they're going to go to hell, that they'll never have a relationship. There's a lot of propaganda. It beats people down. I'll give you an example. Alan Chambers from Exodus International went on a national television show recently and said, oh, I decided I wasn't going to be gay because I knew once I went bald, once I lost my tan, that homosexuality was for the young and nobody would want me anymore. These are kind of lies and flat out distortions that come from these guys. They have to scare people into these ministries, and the biggest scare tactic, of course, is HIV and AIDS. And they call that's the homosexual, quote, lifestyle. And if you come out of the closet, that's definitely going to be your fate because, of course, no straight people have HIV, as we know.
Yeah, none at all. And we are live, and we are taking phone calls at 718-460-9802. We do have a caller on the line. Caller, when you're ready, just say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
No, I mean, with what you just talked about, the guy from Jerry Falwell and those powerful people like the governor, how much money do you think, how do you think money actually plays into these guys' decision to flip the switch, if you will, if I could use that phrase, or to not be honest?
It's a really good question, and the fact is almost everybody we've seen that has claimed to go from gay to straight is ex-gay for pay, as we call it. They work for right-wing organizations like Focus on the Family or Exodus International. It's almost impossible to find people who claim to have gone from gay to straight and prayed away the gay, who are just independent people with a white picket fence and aren't getting paid to say that they have converted. So it does play a role, for sure.
Cash-fueled
I don't
hypocrisy.
I don't think they get into it for that reason. I think they're sincere. However, they keep going because they're paying their mortgage with the money from these lies. So you can get into it for the right reasons because because that's your strong-held religious belief and you really want to change, and basically you're ashamed of yourself. It's shame.
And then you're raped by these organizations.
Well, or what happens is you get paid by them to say and then it's a lot harder to get out of it because you're also not just telling the truth, but your livelihood, your job. You have to get a job, and it's tied up in it. So they continue because they're getting paid.
Does your organization deal with domestic violence among gay couples or gay families? Either which way?
We don't deal with domestic violence at all. We just don't have the expertise in that area to address it.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your call.
You're welcome.
Okay, I mean, which just the caller brought up cash and payment and funding. I mean, which side of the argument tends to be better funded?
I think the religious right has to be much better funded than we do. It's so much harder to lie consistently. You have to spend a lot more money. And in fact, their strategy has been, if you throw enough against the wall, some of it's going to stick. And I consider it, it's almost like swatting flies in a junkyard. Each lie is like a little fly, and you can get a few of them, but you're not going to get all of them. And that's really, think about it, that's their technique. And it works. They've focused on the family, $150 million a year. Our main opponent, Exodus International, $1 million and 15 staff members. Truthwinsout.org, 2 staff members. And we fight to do everything we can. But we're effective even with less, although we certainly could use more. But we can be effective because we're telling the truth.
Right.
And that goes a long way. We don't have to spend tons on these big advertising campaigns to fool people.
Right, but I mean, just even looking at the campaigns on the other side, when I see the wording and I hear what they're saying, I can tell that it's been very formulated and probably created by someone with some psychiatric training, just to get under the skin, just to prey on the insecurities.
They're very slick, and they go to PR firms and advertising firms, and they work with these pseudoscientists who have a degree from a really bad school, but they know just enough how to use the language, as you're saying, to manipulate people. I think that's probably the best word I can think of. They manipulate them into believing things that simply aren't true. But it's really, I mean, we call it the ex-gay industry because it's really, that's what it is. They're pumping out on an assembly line of lies. And when one of these failures fall, they replace them with another fraud. And it's a vicious circle. But the record of these organizations is dismal. In fact, the founders of Exodus International, Michael Bussey and Gary Cooper, left their wives and married each other. The founders of Homosexuals Anonymous, he was on the Phil Donahue show a couple of times. Okay. He had to resign because he was having sexual relations with his clients, including nude massages. And I mean, and of course we mentioned Mr. Johnston and Mr. Polk already. So I don't think their track record's very good. And that's why these ex-gay ministries, they don't keep statistics. Because if they did, they'd be out of business. But because of these scandals, they've even had to change their rhetoric for the past decade, which instead of always offering a miracle cure, they call it a long-term struggle. They never tell you it's a dead end, really. It's not a journey. It's really a cul-de-sac where you just go around and around and around and never end up in the same spot. You're just a little bit poorer, and your self-esteem's a lot lower.
Okay. Well, we have another caller. Caller, just say hello when you're ready.
Yeah, how you doing?
Hi. You have a question?
I have a question. My daughter is in school, and it's a public school. And my question, I would say that, is it fair for these subject matters to be teach to young kids in school? Because I think personally, since my daughter is a young child, she's been like, you know, not brainwashed, but psychologically affecting her because she's not ready for those kinds of teaching in school. So I don't know why they're pushing these matters in public schools for young children, you know?
Gay and lesbian families exist. They've existed forever, and I don't think it should be controversial. I mean, all families are discussed. The proper age for discussing any families, I would leave that to an educational expert. I can't answer that. But I do know that if we act as if certain families are less than others, that hurts the kids who are growing up within these gay and lesbian families. It also makes it appear to their friends in school that there's something that they should be ashamed of. So I think when that topic comes up of family, I mean, I think it's only fair to include all families and not discriminate. And I don't think it does any harm whatsoever. If your child's gay, they're going to be gay. If they're straight, they're going to be straight. If they're bisexual, they're bisexual. And the fact is, the most you can accomplish by suppressing this is forcing your child into a Ted Haggard or Larry Craig kind of marriage where they're trying to deny who they are, but eventually they hurt themselves and the people that they're married to. I think that's where that road leads. Larry Craig and Reverend Ted Haggard, who was having sex with that prostitute in Colorado Springs.
Right, but shouldn't, like, say, for example, as a parent, my daughter is in school, shouldn't I have, like, a choice to say, you know, I don't think it's fair that my daughter should be taught this matter? What would you be, you know?
I understand your concern and where you're coming from with it. My point is that I don't think it's harmful to teach that there are just different types of families out there that exist, and that all families deserve love and respect, no matter if they're gay or families are straight. And you know, the science shows that whether parents are gay or straight, it does not affect your kid's sexual orientation. Talking about this issue doesn't affect sexual orientation. Having gay or lesbian parents does not affect sexual orientation. The only thing that affects sexual orientation is really how you're born. And people, like the vast majority of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people would say that they've always known they were gay, as well as straight people. There's really, they know who they are from a young age, and just talking about the issue creates tolerance of other people and promotes diversity, but it doesn't affect orientation. I do understand your concerns, but I don't think it'll have an impact on your child.
No, because I have gay friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I respect them, you know, but they never try to push their stuff, you know, their lifestyle on me, because we respect each other. But just in the same manner as they respect me, I respect them. You know, my child shouldn't be, like, you know, at a very young age, shouldn't be nothing forced on them, you know. And that's what I'm trying to say, especially in public school.
But isn't it unfair, you might say, to talk about some families and not others? I mean, how is the child supposed to feel in that classroom when their family is specifically excluded from conversations of families? It makes this child feel that they don't exist. And there are thousands of families such as this. In fact, I've got many friends with children, and more gay and lesbian people are having children, either biologically or adopting. And to make these children feel as if something's wrong with their family or they're invisible or less, I think is very harmful on those children. Simply talking very generically about their families in school doesn't affect anybody else, really, except making them more accepting of their peers and making their lives easier. So that's where I have to disagree with you, although I appreciate your concern about this and, and asking those questions.
All right, thank you for your call.
Have a nice day, all right?
Thanks.
Bye now.
Take care.
So, I mean, is that an example of, a lot of the voices that you hear, are they saying similar things to the last caller?
I think a lot of people have these concerns, but everybody has to remember that but most gay and lesbian people came from straight parents. They didn't have any gay influences, yet they're still gay. Upbringing has nothing to do with your sexual orientation. Gay and lesbian people come from every kind of family imaginable. I mean, we all know about Mary Cheney. I can't imagine Dick Cheney having lesbian 101 courses with his daughter.
Right.
I can't imagine Phyllis Schlafly from the Eagle Forum and her gay son John. I can't imagine her teaching homosexuality. If there's one thing we do know beyond a reasonable doubt is that gay people come from every kind of family.
Right, and I think people may have a misconception about teaching about diversity and teaching the mechanics of intercourse at an early age, and I think that is another barrier that is thrown out there by the folks who you're trying to argue against.
Right, and I think it's canard, and I think it's a distraction because I don't know anybody who's teaching really young people the techniques of intercourse.
Right,
and
but that's just those
that's
are
how
the
they
words
present
that they
it.
use, yes.
Yeah, and it's deliberate what they try to do. They try to smear the gay and lesbian community and fool people, because if they told the truth about our lives and they actually were honest about what's happening, they wouldn't be making all those millions of dollars with donations and bilking people using smear, fear, and scare.
Right, and is that really what it boils down to?
That's what it does boil down to. I mean, really, can they exist, groups like Focus on the Family or the Family Research Council, without terrifying people and pitting one group of Americans against another, looking for boogeymen? No, they can't exist unless they do that. They want to create monsters. And then they say, we're going to battle this monster. We're going to battle that Godzilla we've created. And if they stop doing that, then they would be gone. The good news is we've had such great visibility in the last decade that it's making it so much more difficult for them to effectively distort our lives. I mean, really, for example, these marriages, they were very controversial. We saw some in San Francisco, Massachusetts. We're going to see a whole bunch more in the next in the months ahead in California, because of the Supreme Court ruling. And people are getting used to seeing that. And they're seeing people who've been together for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, and makes it very difficult for the right to do their greatest hits of gay pride parades and say, see, here you go, ha! They realize that just like they're a very diverse community. There are some people that do march naked and other people that have a white picket fence in the community. There's no gay, quote, lifestyle. There's a lot of different lifestyles for gay people. We're individuals. And just as heterosexuals, some are going to S&M swingers clubs and others are running for office. But of course, these days it means the same thing. But it's probably a bad example. You can't peg gay people. That's really what coming out is. I mean, it's just people being themselves for who they are and getting rid of having to lie to people. And I try to always relay that to people. Coming out means lying. Who would be opposed to lying? Who would want to maintain lying? And I tell religious people, well, the Bible says you should not bear false witness. And when you're telling someone to remain in the closet, you're telling them essentially to bear false witness and lie to please God. I can't imagine how that's a spiritual or religious point of view. And
the people tend to just pull words and phrases and misquotes and just twist it completely against the original meaning. And that's another thing that I admire about your writing and about your work is you have the balls to point this out. And that's great. And through the websites.
But I'm not showing them on the air. It's a family show.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll talk about the casting couch later. But you also do write a regular column. It's weekly.
I have a weekly column about politics.
Okay.
But
it's also influenced by who you are, so it touches on community issues as well. Primarily.
Politics within the community are how they affect the community. And we've got a big presidential election coming up.
We do?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought I heard rumors about that.
Yeah, I know. It's on the internet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Love that internet.
We've got a big choice to make, and I think that it's not just who becomes president, it's about the Supreme Court. I think we have to be very concerned about another justice coming there for choice issues, if that's what you care about, and for gay rights. I mean, you have to be concerned about whether something about marriage eventually finds its way to the Supreme Court, or if they get a really terribly right-wing judge, if they'll reconsider, for example, sodomy ruling. It's unlikely, but when we have people like Alito and Scalia and Clarence Thomas, I wouldn't say it's out of bounds. I think these people...
Just the damage that's been done in the last 8 years is, is incredible.
They're serving something called the conservative movement rather than the broader consensus of this country, in my view.
Reminds me of a different type of movement.
I think that's accurate, too. So, I think John McCain is not embracing so far the religious right on marriage. Now, he said he's been against the marriage ruling in California, but he's trying to ally himself with Arnold Schwarzenegger and hasn't really come out and made this a signature issue yet. He was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and I believe this week, and he almost looked embarrassed and ashamed that he was saying he was opposed to marriage. And here's something that's really...
Talking to a woman who announced her engagement to Portia, to her female partner.
And, I mean, it's fascinating, but the two people he's very close to, it appears, are rumored to be gay. We don't know if they are, but they certainly, it's been, and I'm not just saying this out of the blue, it's been widely reported, it's been widely reported. Charlie Crist, the governor of Florida, has been rumored to be gay, and it was in many Florida publications, and he's going to go to McCain's ranch house in Sedona, and of course his best friend in the Senate is Lindsey Graham, who has also had those rumors. So I don't know, maybe, I don't know whether it's true or not, I don't know, but maybe simply even the rumor itself, he's not sure, and is afraid to offend some of his friends. So hopefully this won't be a huge issue, but again, even if this isn't front and center, and the Democrats are, by the way, much better than McCain on this issue, but still, no matter what, the Supreme Court is something that we have to be, I think, terrified of. If we get one more right-wing justice, even while this country moves forward and progresses, we're still going to be left with this dinosaur in the marble chambers.
For how many generations?
Yeah, it's going to be this backward Supreme Court and hopefully a forward-looking nation in the near future. But we can see, so we just can't let that happen. I think that to me is even more important than who's sitting in the White House right now. As long as it's not George Bush, because he could just pretty much ruin the world. It's kind of nice to be vindicated because there were so many people that defended him, and now even the Republicans are running away from this man.
I don't know. I mean, every time I see anything about him on TV or in print, I just hear comic book guy from The Simpsons. It's like, worst president ever. And that's just the way it is. And I just want to remind the viewers that we are live and we are taking calls at 718-460-9802. You're watching Talking About. My guest is activist, author, columnist, among many other things, Wayne Besen. So I'm just very glad to have you here. And your second book, Bashing Back, it's a collection of your columns. I've read the entire book, and it to me it marked moments in time within the community. What was going on and when, and it does show what's changed and what needs to change. And it was it's a very worthy read, and it's
well, thank you.
Because it's you're welcome. Because it's a collection of your columns, it's ideal for going to and from work as well.
Well, and also the title "Bashing Back" is important to me, because I believe that we have to fight back and cannot remain passive against the religious right. I think we have to take every opportunity to battle their lies. I think we have to not just stand there and take it anymore. It's incumbent upon us to make it easier for the next generation. And if they're going to hit, we're going to hit back twice as hard and make them pay. I'll give you an example of how I'm doing that. My organization, truthwinsout.org, has what we call the Respect My Research Project. When groups like Focus on the Family lie about studies, we go right to the professors who actually perform these studies. And then we film them saying, please stop distorting my work. Please stop cherry picking my research. Do not quote me again, particularly if you're going to misrepresent my hard work in my study.
Right.
And we've had some great professors, such as Dr. Kyle Pruitt at Yale. We've got in this city, in New York University, the esteemed Carol Gilligan. And we also have several more professors who have come out. It's approaching 10 already. And it's almost, I mean, right-wing lies, it's like raindrops in a monsoon. So we're just we're catching the really big ones. and exposing. But that's what I mean by bashing back. I
Right.
think we can't just go, oh, they've lied. Well, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
That's my perspective
The
from
truth will
activism.
prevail, la la la.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
perspective, and to always challenge them. Never let them fib. Don't, every single time we got to come back at them until this anti-gay movement is defeated. Because it does nothing for this country. It's bad for America. It's divisive. It's bad for GLBT people. And quite frankly, it's really bad for people of faith who are spending all their time and money in some circumstances with the fundamentalists and some of the evangelical groups, instead of fighting poverty or using their efforts for good, they're using their efforts to discriminate. And that certainly doesn't do anything for them except have them waste their time and money in, quite frankly, a losing cause. They're losing. They're going to lose. Nobody's going back in the closet. I can't think of a bigger waste of time and money and effort than the right wing's war against GLBT people.
True. Do you think that the community and just people in general have been too passive in letting it slide?
I think that I think a lot of people have. I think that there's been this assumption, because many of the big groups are in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, that, oh, nobody's going to believe these lies. Oh, it's just a small bunch of people in deliverance land somewhere in the hills. And when they say that, they're just dead wrong, because people are believing this stuff. It's holding back our quest for equality. Every time somebody believes that we're sick, we're perverse, that we're mentally ill, that we're a threat to children, that we're unhealthy, and that we want, quote, special rights. And every time somebody believes those charges, they're much more likely to support anti-gay initiatives and vote against equality. So we have to get to the underlying myth. And once we can get that and expose the fraudulence of this myth that they perpetuate, we can much easier pass legislation, because people will support, by and large, they will support us when they learn the facts.
Right, and it seems that younger people are more open to truth and more open to accept the reality of the situation. I would think that visibility in general is a huge part of that. I mean, the GLBT community has not one but two cable networks, 3 if you count Bravo, and it's just it's out there, and hopefully much against the other side, who would love to just shut the door and push everybody back. That's not going to happen, hopefully.
Well, polls show that the next generation is much more supportive, particularly with marriage and equal rights in the workplace. This is a war in some ways that we're really winning. They launched a cultural war, we're winning. It would take something huge to set this back. I memean, there's another 20 years of hard fighting. It's not easy. It's not our destination or predestination. I think it's something that you have to fight tooth and nail for. But if we continue to work as hard as our opponents, there's nothing that's going to stop in 15, 20 years from us getting where we want to be, particularly with the next generation coming forth and stepping in the roles of leadership, where they've grown up with Will and Grace. They're not so uncomfortable. They turn on their television every day. They have an Ellen and a Rosie, and they just have people in their lives. Their friends are coming out instead of at 35. They're coming at it at 15.
Right.
And they're just growing up, and it's not that big a deal in many places anymore. In some places it still is. That's why we got a lot of fighting to do. And we have to get the right information and educate a lot of people still. But we have we're approaching a majority right now, and the trends are so encouraging that I would much rather be in our shoes than I would be in those of the Traditional Values Coalition or the Family Research Council or the American Family Association.
Yeah,
they're just fighting to bring us back to the 1950s, and the world's passing them by as they just sit there and try to recreate a world which is really mythological anyway.
Right, in the name of so-called family values, and then what are these so-called values that are being presented but hate?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, they have confused traditional values with valueless traditions. And that's really what they wanted. They did this same thing with interracial marriage. They were opposed to that. Like many of the leaders today are opposed to gay rights. If you go back, they were opposed to interracial marriage. And before that, we had a very conservative element that didn't want women to vote, and that were anti-Semitic, and certainly supported all kinds of discrimination. And I think that I think America wants to move past that. And they want to go to a place where, and it takes a while in this country. We usually get it right. It just takes longer than it should.
Yes.
And we're definitely headed in that direction right now.
I think, yeah, people tend to, there's always some kind of rallying cry. Somebody, there's always this fictitious enemy. And it's just, the gay community is it at the moment.
The most fascinating poll I've seen recently, I think it was a Barnum poll, it's escaping me specifically right now, but I think that's what it was, that Christians were, young Christians, were turning away from the church in many instances because they saw it as intolerant. It was a turnoff. And many of these churches are going to have to change their tune or they're going to wither in 10 years. Talking about abortion and the gay agenda over and over again is getting tired, it's getting stale, and it's also contradicting what these younger people are seeing in their real lives on a daily basis. It just, what's being preached at the pulpit and what they're seeing on the ground, in the school, in their neighborhood, with their friends, it's so diametrically opposed to what they're preaching up there that they're saying, well, if they're not right about this, they're so off base, maybe there's a lot of things that they're off base about. There's a lot of other issues. Younger people are interested. They're interested in the environment now. They're interested in helping the poor. They're interested in feeding the hungry and helping the sick. And they see all this time, money, and energy wasted on gay bashing. It's really a turnoff, and I think that the church is going to have to grapple with that in the coming years.
On the other side of the coin, there are some smaller churches popping up that are more open and accepting and tolerant, and that's preached from the pulpit as well.
The progressive churches have really stepped forward recently. There's a group, for example, Faith in America, that my friend Mitchell Gold founded, that works with churches and exposes what he calls religion-based discrimination or religious-based bigotry. And there's a lot of church organizing. The Human Rights Campaign is also organizing with churches and many other groups out there. And of course, we've got the Metropolitan Community Church within our community. It's been so wonderful and out front for so long. But for quite a while, I mean, you had to be really disappointed with the progressive response. They just got steamrolled by the conservatives. We've seen a change. Now people are stepping forward. Even in the presidential election, both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were talking about their faith from a progressive point of view, and it's having an effect.
Well, faith is not a dirty word.
No, they can't. I mean, personally, I'm not very religious, but I work with people all the time who are, and for a lot of people, this is how you have to reach them. And I respect the people that are out there doing that outreach. For those individuals, it takes sometimes a different argument, and we've got a lot of people within our community and without who are making the case. And we can not only win this debate from a scientific perspective, which is very easy because the other side relies on stereotypes, not science, but we can also win this from a religious perspective because, while I'm not religious, certainly Jesus never mentioned homosexuality, which is quite amazing that that's all these groups that call themselves Christian talk about. So there are a lot of progressive Christians these days, and Jews, and in some cases, although not as many Muslim groups, that have stepped in and said, hey, you don't own a religion. Stop saying that you represent faith. We represent it just as much as you, and we're no longer going to let you distort what religion is and also turn a lot of people off.
Okay, we have about 12 minutes left. I want to focus a little bit more on Truth Wins Out. The website is truthwinsout.org. And what will people find on the site?
Well, we're really proud. We just put this collection of video testimonies from ex-gay survivors, people who went through the ex-gay ministries and spent years of their lives, tens of thousands of dollars, and now they're out there trying to help people by telling their stories. I think we've got the best video collection of anybody out there of such people. And we also have a lot of fact sheets on these so-called ex-gay ministries and reparative therapy. We let people know what the experts have to say about it. The American Psychiatric Association, American Psychological Association, we've got experts such as Dr. Jack Drescher from the APA, although he doesn't represent the APA in the video, but from his private practice, and Dr. Andrea McCary, who a great mental health professional, psychologist in Great Neck, New York, who's also helping people. And we also have parents who talk about it from that perspective, how they once rejected their kid, but then they learned to accept and love their child, and the big turnabout that happened in their lives. And something I'm particularly happy to show, and that is the spouses of these ex-gays who had their lives destroyed, that were married to people for 30 years, only to find themselves single in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And what happened to my life? My life was a lie because somebody was given the false bill of goods that they could pray away the gay. It's tragic, it's painful, it's a story we've seen time and again, and we're doing everything we can to make sure more people don't have to live through that horror.
Right, and that's hugely admirable. I mean, it's one of the things that drew me to the site and to want to do this show in particular. And it's got to be incredibly rewarding when you help to facilitate or help somebody find the inner peace that comes with self-acceptance.
It's an incredible feeling when somebody comes up and says, "Thank you, you helped keep my family together," or "You helped me see that these ministries are harmful." And sometimes we stop people from going in the first place, and that's great. Other times, instead of being in for 10 years, they'll be in for 10 months because they get the right information. And I always go back to thinking of me at 16, what I was going through, how I was going to deal with it, how painful that was. And that's who I work for today. I work for that young man or that young woman or that young trans individual who is trying to deal with who they are. And they see all these negative messages. And we're doing everything we can to say, hey, you're okay with who you are, not who others want you to be. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with their prejudice. And every day I get up, I try to remember that feeling and try to help that person be healthy and happy and live a rich, fulfilling, and whole life. And hopefully we're having some success with it. I love when we hear people tell us that. Hopefully we're reaching more people. And not just our organization, The Truth Wins Out, but so many of the others that across this country, whether at the federal, state, or local level, that are stepping up the show, airing these issues, is who knows who's watching it today. And that's what's so important about getting these messages out there. We don't know, somebody could have been contemplating suicide and now they're not. Or they're at least wait to explore and learn for themselves the truth, rather than hearing it through these greedy organizations that don't really care what happens to people. They just want their money.
And the lies can only lead to pain, suffering, and possibly death.
I can't think of a good outcome when your life is based on a lie. One of the great things I heard one of our survivors of the ex-gay ministry said, it's hard to be somebody in life when you spend all your time trying not to be somebody. And how true. I mean, how true is it? You can't go your whole, just the word ex-gay You're negating who you are. You're not somebody. You're not something. And you can't live a productive life like that. And we see many of these leaders who are in these ministries, and all they do is get involved with these ministries from dusk to dawn. That's all they can think about. Because if they're actually out on their own and left to their own devices to be themselves, they'd be out of the closet. It's consuming. That's the great irony for all the people who are trying not to be gay. They spend all their time thinking about this issue. Once somebody comes out of the closet, the issue is kind of a non-issue. They don't think about it that often. It's unless they face discrimination or they're trying to date, you know. But generally, it just does. They're just at work and it doesn't cross their mind. There's not this inner turmoil, this struggle that goes on with these poor individuals in these ministries that we're trying to help. And you know, some of these people, even all they're saying insidious things, they're victims. Alan Chambers from Exodus International is a victim. Randy Thomas from Exodus International, these are victims. They're people who heard all these horrible things about GLBT people and they believed it. And now they're trying, so they won't come out of the closet, to demean gay life because they're afraid if they actually accept, but it's okay to be gay, it's fine. It's no different than being straight in the sense that your sexual orientation is part of who you are, big part, but it doesn't, it's not all who you are.
Right.
And these poor, sad individuals, we try to help them whenever we can so they can eventually live lives that aren't full of such a push and pull, a tug of war within their soul. And sometimes we've had success. We did a radio show once, my favorite story, against on the Alan Colmes radio show, against a man, a spokesperson for the ex-gay ministries, Wade Richards, and he was really good on the other side. And I told him at the end of the show, I said, if you're ready to come out of the closet at some point, call me. He goes, oh, that will never happen. I'm free. I love life. You know, I've been saved. 6 months later, he called me, and then he came out in an article in the Advocate magazine and went on to live a life of who he was. You know, these sad ex-gays, it's like an actor playing a role. They can become very good at it. And if they're really hardcore and dedicate themselves, they can even come to believe that they're that role by suppressing their sexual orientation. But in the end of the day, the show has to end. The final curtain falls. And they have to take off the mask and be themselves again.
Right. Yeah. Or, yeah, they could just have a very wide stance.
That's plan B. Or number 2.
Yeah.
Would be more appropriate.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that people can find their peace and be who they were born to be, because that's really what it comes down to. Who were you born to be?
And some people never do. I mean, we look at Larry Craig. I mean, this guy might not even believe he's gay. He's been in the closet for so long. I mean, he actually thinks that straight guys misbehave in the restroom. I mean, but there are many people like that who never make it out. I have people, some of our survivors in our Truth Wins Out videos, who came out in their 50s or 60s and were married and had grown kids. So sometimes people figure it out right away. Like when I got that subliminal hypnotic tape and I listened to it for 15 minutes and realized my parents were bilked by some cruel con artists that took advantage of them when they were desperate and vulnerable. And other people, unfortunately, takes them a little longer. It can take them years of their lives. And once you can convince somebody that they're going to hell, that they've got the demon of homosexuality in them, and there's a Life Ministries in New York that actually believes homosexuality is demonic. It's in Manhattan. And once you actually believe that, you bought that bill of goods, then you'll do anything to change them, no matter how bizarre, no matter how wacky, how weird. You'll do like they do sometimes. You have a rubber band on your arm, and every time you see a good-looking guy or girl, depending on your sex, you snap the rubber band, snaps you back into reality. Other times, have you drink Gatorade and call your friends dude to become more masculine. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. But again, if you believe that there's a guy with a big pot of fire and a pitchfork underneath the ground waiting for you, if you have any sort of pleasure in your life, or experience love, then you'll be surprised the contortions mentally people will go through to not acknowledge who they are.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've seen people in pain because of denial, and yeah, you can reach out, but if somebody's just not ready, it's very difficult. But you can let them know that the truth is there, and you can let them know that you're a willing ear.
And that's difficult sometimes. Sometimes you just have to let people go and experience this. All you can
Right.
do is provide them with the information and let you know you're going to be there for them. We had a survivor of ex-gay ministries who recently, even though he spent a lot of money and wasted a decade of his life or more in these groups, he fell back into it. He was, and I mean, breaks your heart. But all you can really do is just say we're here and let them experience it. Sometimes people have to learn on their own, even if they're going to get hurt very badly by it. And but I think you can cut the time down people experience this by providing a way out. They may not choose to leave that tunnel, but you can give them that flashlight, so when they're ready, they'll turn it on.
Right.
And that's all you can hope for sometimes.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. But sometimes it just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this individual, Jesus talked to them in their car, and apparently, and told them that he should be straight. And what are you going to do? I mean, if somebody says that, you just say we're here when you're ready. But we see that type of thing quite a bit, actually. People, a lot of voices and visions, and we also have people who are in these ministries who make a lot of really bad choices in their lives. They get hooked on drugs. They choose the wrong partners. They live in very unhealthy ways. And instead of taking personal responsibility, they blame their sexual orientation for this.
And that's a topic for a whole. We could do a whole other hour on that alone.
Right.
Just in the last minute and a half or a minute or so, where can people find more information and the resources that they might need if they're looking for that bit of help and they're ready?
I would go to truthwinsout.org.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Truthwinsout.org, and I might be biased, but I think buying my book, Anything But Straight, would also be anybody who's thinking of these ministries or struggling with this issue. I think that would be an excellent beginning reference point.
Okay, and there's more information about the book and where to find it on the Truth Wins Out website as well as your personal website,
yes,
which is
WayneBesen.com.
Okay, well,
it's a daily blog that addresses a whole bunch of different issues.
Okay, so check that out. Check out our site, www.talkingabout.info. We're out of time.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks for being here. I'm really glad that we actually got to have a full conversation this time.